I would like to welcome everyone to a discussion about the powerful documentary, Because We Are Girls. It looks at the impact of sexual abuse on an Indo-Canadian family over decades and the story of how three sisters broke that cycle. They grew up in a small BC town. I'd like to express gratitude to the National Film Board and thank the National Film Board for providing us this space to explore this very, very difficult topic. We will be discussing the topic with our filmmaker and as well with the three sisters who were involved in the film, the Pooni sisters. We will also be taking questions from the audience, and audience members can also enter their questions in the chat on YouTube as well. And so we'll be taking those questions towards the end of this discussion. I would like to introduce our filmmaker, Baljit Sangra. She is the founder of Viva Mantra Films. She's a documentary filmmaker who focuses on social justice issues and cross-cultural issues. Thank you for joining us, Baljit.
Hi, Meera. Happy to be here.
Yeah, she joins us from Vancouver. She's an old friend of mine. We worked in television together. Now I'd like to introduce Jeeti Pooni. She is one of the three sisters that told her story of abuse. She was one of the instrumental forces behind this documentary and making her story public. And she's also a motivational speaker and an advocate for sexual abuse awareness. Welcome, Jeeti.
Hi, thank you.
And Jeeti joins us from Surrey, as well as Kira, who also joins us from Surrey. She's one of the most powerful voices in this documentary, and she shared a lot of time in some of the question and answer discussions during some of the community showings that have been taking place about the film, Because We Are Girls. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to start off the discussion with a question to Baljit. Sexual abuse in families, especially immigrant families, is buried so deep. How were you able to form that connection with the Pooni sisters in order for them to tell their story to you?
Okay, thanks, Meera. In terms of my connection to the story, it's just a little bit of history. I'll just go back a bit. I knew about the story from Jeeti, who's a friend of mine, and we met way back when I was working in television, and I did a story on her, and she had a fashion line at Vancouver Fashion Week. And we stayed friends after that for many years. And then I did my first doc, Warrior Boys, and we had lunch, and she asked me, have you ever thought about doing a documentary on sexual abuse in our community? And I said, yes, but how would you do that? Like, most women wouldn't feel comfortable coming out. And then she disclosed that she and her sisters were survivors of sexual abuse. So around this time, the sisters went to the police. I think it was around 2007, and the file sat with them for years. They never told their parents that they had gone to the police. Going to trial and breaking their silence was going to have a profound impact on the family. That's when I first heard of the story and followed the story as a friend through Jeeti. Eventually, they had a pre-trial and the case got moved to the Supreme Court in 2015. And at that point, as a friend, I knew there was momentum and a story in following this journey. I think it's really important to mention the impetus of the film came from Jeeti. She wanted to tell her story and approach the National Film Board. I got involved later to do a development shoot that later got greenlit for production. Our producer, Selwyn Jacob, thought I was a good fit as I had worked with him and had a connection to Jeeti. In terms of access and the connection to the sisters, as I mentioned before, I had met Jeeti and I knew her sisters. I think because we had a friendship and we come from the same background, there was an established trust that allowed for vulnerability. We grew up with the same cultural and social values. I understood why they kept this a secret for over 2 decades. And I felt that I could really relate to the story. And as a filmmaker, it was so empowering for me to be on this journey with them, to bear witness to how they persevered and saw this through. It took 3 years to make this film, and 1 year between development and production, we didn't get the funding, but I followed the story on my own. And I think that really made a difference. It was there. I got to spend a lot of time with them. I went up to Williams Lake a couple times with them when they're ready to testify. I was witness to so many emotions. I saw the trauma, but I also witnessed how they supported each other. the sisterhood, the light moments. And I think, that really helped me build a lot of trust, and they got more comfortable having the camera around. Yeah, and I think it's also important to mention when we were in Williams Lake, and I was with them, like staying in the same hotel room, seeing what they were going through. In the global community, the Me Too movement was happening, and it felt really amazing. It felt like we were really part of a movement, and it validated what the women were going through, because other women were breaking their silence and for the greater good. However, I think we did realize, the Me Too movement had been disproportionately realized by women of color. So I think it made this journey and the stakes even higher. And we really saw that when the film got out in the world, that so many women, especially women from our community, came forward and thanked the sisters, thank me, that somebody has spoken about this, because I think they really want to break their silence too. And I remember talking with the sisters, again in Williams Lake, that this whole journey is really a way of giving back, a sense of seva. And so that's sort of my connection. It started way back, and it's been a real honor to be part of this journey with them. And it has been an incredible journey. And here we are on YouTube.
Well, that brings us to our next question. And this is for Jeeti. You were just so brave in coming forward. What prompted you to come out and tell your story and go to police?
Well, there were tremendous decades of suffering from going through the abuse and then keeping it hidden inside. So when it came time to break my silence, I had to. It came from inside that once. Can you hear me?
Oh. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So I just wanted to make sure, sorry. So it just came to that point where I had to tell my truth, and that was the most important thing. I did not care about the consequences, whether I would lose my daughter, my house, my marriage, or anything else, because it was affecting me, and it was affecting my sisters. And I felt that we were being blamed and accused of something that we didn't bring upon to ourselves. So it was very important for the truth to come out, my truth to come out, and for me to stand up for my sisters. And also my parents, they didn't do anything about it when we first told them. So it became necessary to take the next step to stop this person from harming other girls. So there were many motivating factors. But I would say the biggest one was telling my truth as to what happened, and standing up for my girls, standing up for other girls, standing up for my sisters, so we could put an end to this trauma that I felt was still inflicting on other girls.
Mm-hmm. And Kira, you were involved and you were a very strong voice in a very powerful scene where you talked to your parents about the abuse that happened decades ago. And it was very raw and emotional. What was it like for you in those moments, and with cameras rolling, talking to your parents?
I think the biggest thing is when you're going through the trial motion and you're bonding with your support system, which at that time was my sisters. When you have your sisters there with you, you forget about anything else that's going on. It just kind of melts into the background. And when we were there sitting, talking to our parents, it's just years of bubbling emotion, just stuff that needed to be said. And it just became the catalyst of everything that I wanted to ever say to them, just rushing through. And I think also, as Baljit mentioned, it was a process of trust. So when Jeeti thought of the conception of this project, I put trust in her that this is something that, even though I am a very begrudging, unwilling participant in the beginning, of this whole process, I trusted her vision and guidance that we should make a documentary about this. And then when Baljit came on board, that she's not gonna, put us in some type of negative light, that her purpose is also to shed a light on this type of issues that a lot of families face. And then also with Terry and Selwyn, they're the producers, we shared food with them, right? If you've ever had my mom's sag and makili roti, you just sit and bond and you develop a camaraderie. So everybody that was part of it, and then Grant, he was behind the camera. He's the director of photography. So we bonded with him as well. He told us that he has daughters as well, and was very emotional even before and during the filming. So it was very intrusive. The filming was very intrusive. We just felt like we were just like as if we were in our living room, but it didn't seem like there were cameras and lights all around, and just the way everything was shot. And I would look at Baljit, who was beside the door, and she would look at me with a smile and just kind of keep on saying, yeah, it's good. And I'm telling you, a few times I wanted to just get up and jump and leave out of the door before we started talking, because this is not easy stuff to sit down and speak out about. So, I mean, in one sense, it was very tumultuous and very overwhelming for me to talk to them. But then on the other hand, you have to have that in the back of your mind that you're doing it for a greater purpose and a greater good.
Mm-hmm. And Baljit, what was it like filming that scene?
Hi, okay, sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, no, that scene was kind of near the end of our production. I think, so, the sisters had gone up and down to court, they had testified, they had gone through a lot. So the emotions were already kind of bubbling under the surface, and it was like a scene with the whole family. And, and if you watch the film, you can see it starts out with a T, and then just the emotions just start to build. But the way we were filming it, it was just me, the sound, and the camera. Was only shot with one camera, and the rest of the crew was sort of way in the back, hidden. And yeah, it was so powerful. Like, we were filming, but I mean, I'm a filmmaker, but I'm also a friend. So I remember being behind the camera and just crying, weeping myself. You almost want to stop and give them a hug, but you're like, we got to film. So it was incredible. Yeah, no, I mean, I have to thank Jeeti and Kira and Selakshana and the parents, for allowing us to be in that space and that trust. And I think that scene resonates so much with audiences, because we've all felt misunderstood or not supported, or can relate to a lot of the emotion that comes out in that scene. Yeah, so I think where we filmed, like in the process, added a lot, because they've already, went through a lot together. And the next time we filmed, I believe, was the verdict. So we were this is near the end of the shoot. Yeah. So it was very profound. And it was profound to be with the family after we filmed. We all, like Kira says, we break bread together. We, had some tea and a meal, and it was very emotional for everybody there. And I think it's something none of us behind and in front of the camera will ever forget.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings us to a question I think I have for all of you. This film is very unique in that it's such a heavy subject matter, but it had some light moments and some dark moments, but it also had some Bollywood clips that gave a different sense of life to the documentary, and it was sort of threaded throughout. And I'm just wondering, Jeeti, how did you feel about having some of the Bollywood scenes in there? Did it take you back?
The Bollywood scenes were an absolute must in this film, and Baljit and I had numerous discussions about that. And these clips that are in the film are actually films that we have seen, and starting when I was a 4-year-old girl. So there's so many memories and emotions tied to these clips that were shared. For instance, where, the touching of the man's feet, the woman touches her husband's feet and he still doesn't forgive her. That was a very traumatizing moment for me as a little girl, and not being able to comprehend. And with the Bollywood scenes, it's also, that's what our life was. We had fun, joyous moments where we would dance, and I'd, pretend I was in these gorgeous, scenic areas. And then there was times where, like the trauma and the horror of life as well. So it just ties into who we were and what we went through as children. So it visually puts it in front there for you, and also culturally, how it's not just your home and your culture in your house or in your town, in your community that it dictates what kind of beliefs that one develops, right? And the submissiveness and the oppression and all of that of young girls. It's also the films. That's what we saw in the film. And we knew then, watching these films, what our place is in a family. And basically, it's the lowest place, because men have the hierarchy and men have the higher places. And we're supposed to just bow down to men, and that gets instilled inside you, like from when you're young, right? So, and I think the film beautifully portrays all of that we went through.
Mm-hmm. And Baljit, what prompted you to use the clips? It must have been very difficult to get some of the rights and things like that as well involved.
Yeah, that's a whole other side story about getting the rights and trying to finish the movie and tracking down Bollywood producers. Some were dead because some of the clips we used were pretty old, and then getting the wrong clips one time for one of the films. Jeeti remembers. Anyways, that was, but really, I mean, the whole approach of the film is trying to keep it as super personal as possible, right? And if you stay personal, so many themes can emerge from that. The personal is political. So, I weave past and present, touch on their childhood, immigrant experience, racism, patriarchy, gender inequality, the pressure to have a son. All those themes are in the film. And the film has intense emotional moments, but also has moments of joy, resilience. You see the sisters dancing at the lake, and, having a laugh. And so all of that's super important. But to help illustrate, and again, like with conversations with Jeeti, the Bollywood and family archives really worked. Bollywood did inform their sense of romance, escape, fantasy. And like Jeeti said, it reinforced the role of women and how important it was to be virtuous. And if you weren't, what would happen? And a lot of the movies, the women committed suicide, or, pretty awful things would happen. They were totally rejected. And again, also about the Bollywood, I mean, when I met everybody and I asked them all, what was your favorite childhood memory, including your parents? It was going to the Bollywood cinema growing up. I don't know if it was on Sundays but like that was something like everybody looked forward to. The whole family would go. And I think it offered hope and escape for everybody. The kids were going through what they were going through. The parents were, immigrants and working hard. So they would get these 3 hours of sort of relaxation. And it was just them two as a family. This is kind of before everybody else started arriving. So Bollywood is super special. The other sister who's not here, Selakshana, she shares the distributor would go around and give posters, and she would just collect them all and put them under her bed and talk to them. Like, it was pretty profound. And in the movie, you see early on the family all sitting around the living room and going through records. So they had a lot of these Bollywood films in their dad's record collection. They grew up with them. And you see that in the film where they're, acting out, certain songs, or looking through the records and remembering memories of acting out scenes. So I think it was super important to put it in there because it's so reflective of this family and their experience.
Mm-hmm. And Kira, you have been a strong voice at some of the community showings. So this documentary has been shown in theaters, and there's been Q&As afterwards. And Kira, has been very eloquent in answering the audience questions and really connecting with the audience. I'm wondering, Kira, what has the reaction been for you? I know you've been approached after this film by people young and old to talk about their experiences.
I think the most powerful part for me is the more authentic that I had been through this process. I think the more it resonates with people and their own stories. So when you watch the story and you watch the end clips, you have already made a connection with all the people that are on the screen. And in order to find out the results of the case that we had been going through, a lot of people feel almost like the system has failed, which it has. The system has failed to do what is right, and I didn't get quote unquote justice. I always make sure that people know that it doesn't matter which system tells you that they don't want to either believe your voice or they don't want to hear your voice. You just make sure that you take all of your wonderful soul that you have inside and just share who you are as a person, and who wants to hear your voice or not, that doesn't really matter. Who believes you or not, that doesn't matter. You just go out and don't leave that inside. Don't leave the pain inside and the trauma inside. Just go and resonate with who you are in this world, and the world will come back and be a friend to you, and really guide those people towards you who will align with you and who will comfort you and support you. And that's what I feel, that all these people are supporting me because of how they feel they can connect with me on a deeper level. I really, really appreciate everybody's wonderful, words and gratitude and all of the support that they've sent me my way. I have had a lot of people sending me blessings, and, it's just been very overwhelming at times, but I just feel so humble and grateful that there are wonderful people out there.
Mm-hmm. I just want to add, if I may, I think that the reason the film is doing so well and is having such a profound impact on people's lives is because my sisters and I shared our truth from our heart. So when you speak from your heart, people will listen to you from their heart. And there's no pretentiousness. There's no hiding anything. We told our truth, whether anyone would believe us or not, or whether they would come watch the film or not. For us, it was important to stand up for ourselves and tell our truth, and set the example that no one should remain silent anymore. And why should we all suffer in silence when we're the ones that are being victimized? So I think that's what people really appreciate. And as everyone knows, it's not easy to get up and tell your story to another person, let alone the courtroom or the camera for the NFB, right? So it took a lot of, I can't even tell you what it took. Courage, vulnerability, like every ounce of our being went into telling the truth so that truth could be heard and truth could shine. So I encourage everyone to kind of tap into that knowingness that comes from within and follow that voice from within, because on the outside, we will all be shunned, we will be blamed, and you name it, for whatever people want to judge us for and blame us for. But when you shine in your truth, you will get the impact that my sisters and I have had.
Mm-hmm. And Baljit, in presenting this film, you've had a lot of people come up to you as well, talking about their stories. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, it's been, again, like I echo both of these sisters. It's been really humbling. It's incredible. A lot of direct messages. People want to, they've held on to a secret for so long, they let you know. I guess, I hope it comes out in the movie. I mean, these sisters pursued this in the courts, but I mean, that's not for everybody, right? So just like what Jeeti was saying, letting your truth out, finding people you can share that with, getting help, be it counseling, all of that's really important. Like that's not for everybody, and that is a really a tough journey, arduous journey to pursue justice in the courts. I mean, it took years for them, you know, to get a verdict, but I think it's really brought up people's feelings that they had buried long ago, and they just share. And I think it really crosses all cultures because it resonated with everybody. Like I said, you know, if you keep the film super personal, people will relate to it, and that's kind of what's been happening. Yeah, no, I've been really happy with the response, and the more we talk about it, even when we've had Q&As, people sometimes have stood up and shared their truth, and they maybe have never shared that before. So I think the more we talk about it, you know, we're really chipping away at that stigma and taboo, and that's where we need to be at, really. Like, there shouldn't be shame in this at all. And I think that's been a real goal in all the community screenings, and us, you know, showing up and reach, you know, responding back to people who reach out to us, because, you know, you shouldn't feel shame for this. It's not your fault. It's not, you know, your secret.
Yeah, and that brings us to a question for the Pooni sisters. I'm wondering about the healing process. Did this film, did the process help in that process of healing from your journey?
Kira, you want to go first?
No, I'm good.
No, the healing did not come from making the film, all those years that it took to put it all together, and you know, me filling in Baljit with some of the details about my sisters and stuff, which at times I felt like I was gossiping about my sisters. But no, the healing did not come from that part of the journey. The healing did not come from the court process. The healing came from standing up for my truth. And like Baljit said, not everyone can do it in the way that us sisters have done it. So it's really important to stand up for yourself, for your truth. And by breaking your silence and shining in your truth, what I mean is acknowledging your own story. So if you're hiding from your own story, there's no healing. It's just more suppression, which we all know will lead into further trauma and disease and all of that stuff. And it's, I saw counseling in 2006, September 9th, when I hit my living room floor in a mess. My immediate reaction was, okay, this is not me. I have to get better. I have a daughter to take care of. So I sought counseling immediately, and off and on for 10 years, I was in and out of my therapist's office until he passed away. And even now, my healing journey continues. I will never be healed. I will never be completely healed, is what I meant to say. Every day I spend time going into myself and doing exercises, and I use different modalities that help me heal. And with the release of the film, it's when other people that have suffered and they have so much love to share, and the trust that they display in us by sharing their story, and for the first time for many of them, it's just, that part is healing. So seeing the impact of the film, how it's helping people, that part is healing, because you see others being able to rise in a rightful way, which is their birthright. It's their birthright to shine. No one should have to sit there in a puddle of, you know, shame and blame and all of that stuff. So that part is a healing process for me. But again, if I don't keep up with my day-to-day healing practices, there's no way. I mean, the trauma will never leave me, and there's no way I can live a healthy life. So I do encourage everyone to take some sort of journey into healing if you've suffered, anything like my sisters and I have, or any other sort of violence, right?
Okay.
Yeah, the biggest part when the healing journey comes from letting yourself realize that what happened to you is just something that's happened to your body. Your body, in a sense, is your vessel, is your flesh. So when you look at your soul is still there. and it's just waiting to come out and radiate in its beautiful light that it came when you were first born. So you have to just let your light shine through and keep at the healing process. And what I call it, hit it from all sides. So if you believe in naturopath, you believe in acupuncture, you go to massage, you go to cognitive behavioral therapy, you go to traditional, psychologists or psychiatrists. If you keep at it and keep chipping away at it, it will help you and put you on a path that will make sure, and it'll guide you for what your sense of healing is. And not everybody, I'm not telling everybody to take this kind of step, go through the judicial process, go make a documentary. If you feel that's going to help you heal, go ahead. But for me, the healing process didn't begin until I started accepting myself and telling myself that, you know what, just step back and it's okay. It's your soul that's trying to get out and touch everybody else, not trying to portray that, I'm just so healed and I'm so great. Healing is a journey, and it just happens step by step. And that's what you have to be patient and just go step by step.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to add, and maybe they can talk on it too. I think the process, the parents' journey in the film, they really, allowed us to be intimate with, family discussion, and you see that in the film. And, I was super worried when I showed them the film before we had a big opening. I kept staring at your mom and dad. But, after her parents said, that's good. Yeah, they felt fine about it. And they knew that this film was going to help a lot of people. And I think maybe, they can touch on it as a family, maybe post-film, or the relationship with their parents. If that's changed, because their parents were also part of this journey, for sure. They're probably, a different place, but everybody was on this ride, on this journey for sure. The whole family, to be honest. Too.
Yeah, we're starting. Thanks, Baljit. We're starting to get in some questions from the audience on YouTube. And we have a question from Sharon Jeet. I was wondering if anything has come about from the petition. I think maybe Jeeti might be the best one to answer that.
Well, the petition, obviously we launched because we want Crown Council to appeal. And we also want other levels of government to sit down with us so that there can be changes implemented that would help so many survivors. And when I see the matter go to court as an appeal is when I'll believe it. So we're still continuing to take signatures. I do feel I do believe it's gonna go to appeal, but like I said, until we get a date and where that date comes is when I'll believe it. Because my journey through this system has been disappointment after disappointment, adjournment after adjournment. So that was a good 8 years of trial, right? But other than that, that's all I have to say about that yet. And I'm thank you everyone for signing and supporting us and supporting this journey. And we will let you know once the matter goes to court.
And this next question is from Vanita, and either Kira or Jeeti can answer this. For the sisters in having your own children or nephews and nieces, have you shared your story with them? And if so, how did they cope? And what steps have you taken to ensure dialogue and open dialogue and safety?
Well, I'll go ahead.
No,
well, for me, the biggest motivation to even being part of the court process and then part of this documentary has been my wonderful nieces. I've always been a very devoted masi to them, and I've always wanted to make sure that they were in a safe, protected environment. So in 2006, when nobody was doing anything about this person being in our life, I was trying to run around my niece during a party, And then I thought to myself, why am I just putting her in a bubble and making sure that she's safe from him? Why am I not putting my effort into getting this person out of our life and our family's life? And then everything shifted for me. And ever since then, I've done everything that I could to make sure that the next generation is more on a more level platform to be able to have the tools in order to confront this and not look at it the way we were told to look at it, with the shame and the guilt, and be able to give them everything, access to everything, and even the stigma of going to see a psychiatrist or psychologist. I'm very open with them to know that if you need to go talk to somebody else and get outside help, it's okay. And then on top of that, having them watch us, obviously, and be part of the documentary, coming to our Q&As, sitting down and talking to them about where your body parts are, using the actual terms of their body parts, instead of just, glossing it over and then pretending that you don't even have these body parts. Our human body is beautiful, and it's meant to be the way it's meant to be. And it's about time we all look at it as that, beauty, and not put all that blame and shame on it. So go ahead, Jeeti.
And for me, well, my daughters are in the film. So at the time, my older one was around, I think, 14, 15, and my younger one was 7, around there, or 6. But the thing is, we have to have these conversations with our daughters. We can't hide. We can't keep them all locked up and, covered up. So we have to educate them, not just about their bodies, but about boundaries. And what happened to me and my sisters, both of my daughters know, age at an age appropriate level, obviously. My older one is now 20 and my younger one is now 11. They've come to the screenings with us. My niece, she's actually in the film as well. Mm-hmm. And she's in her 30s. So they watch us go through this process. They watch us cry. They watch us laugh. We share everything with them so that they're able to grow up to be strong women. They're able to see that, okay, you know what? There's dark days, there's rainy days, but there are beautiful sunny days. And as women, they are entitled to have so much light into their life. My 11-year-old is actually my tech person today. So she's the one who's helping me, make sure this goes smoothly on this end. So I've involved them in the process, and it was a very, the decision that had to be made, having the girls in the film. My husband wants to live a private life, and here I am. It's the quite opposite. So that decision was very important, because for me, it was important to show the innocence of little girls. And my daughters are 9 years apart. So you can see, an innocence at a 6-year-old level. And then you can see an innocence at a teenager, 14, 15-year-old level. So all of that combined, and when my girls see themselves on screen as well, it's actually a very empowering moment for them. And I've gotten many messages from that conversation that I have with my girls in the film, that there's no system, that can ever hold you back. So you go live your life and you do what you want to do, is the message that I teach my children. And whether you are a virgin or not, I mean, that doesn't define you. That is not your identity, right? So whatever's happened to your body, whatever ways you've been violated, does not dictate the life you get to live moving forward. So it's all within ourselves to live a healthy life despite our stories.
Well, kudos to your 11-year-old. She could be a future filmmaker. You never know.
Hey, Baljit.
Actually, that brings us to a question for Baljit. This is from Taylor. What is the meaning behind the title of the documentary, Because We Are Girls?
Oh, it's an interesting story. I mean, it was hard to come up with a title. We had a board in the editing room and we just kept putting up things, and some of them were really corny and not working. And he's like, what are we going to call this movie? But in the film, in the climax scene, Salakshana says, you know, this happens to us, and the fact that nobody really cared in a way is because we're girls. And when, you know, I heard that a bunch of times, I'm like, that's it. But okay, that came from her. But if you flip it, they did something about it. They rose, they shone because they're girls. You know what I mean? So it could be looked at both ways. It came from from a line from Salakshana in the climax scene, because we're girls. But I mean, the journey that we've been on and connecting with other women, and the fact that these incredibly brave women, you know, took it all the way to Supreme Court, were victorious, you know, it's incredible. And that happened because they're girls. So that I like that side of it too. So, but that's how the title came.
Okay.
I think also that the for us, obviously it's our journey and we are girls, but sexual abuse does happen to boys as well. And just going back to in our family, we always promote with our brother to talk to his son as well, and talk to him about giving boundaries and how do you respect women and men at the same time. So just because the title is Because We're Girls, it actually also resonates with the boys and the men out there who are also struggling to figure out how do we heal from this kind of a journey. So that's the biggest step, that men and women both together, we have to come together to be able to let our next generation know that it's okay for them to go through this process to heal.
Now, this next question is for Jeeti. It's from Tanya Barach. Before the pre-trial, when you told your parents, and if you told the accused family, how did they react?
Well, the accused family, actually, a family member blamed me and my sisters for the abuse. That's what started the whole, the catalyst. That was the catalyst that started for me to, having to open my mouth and break my silence. We had witnessed something, and so we told the accused family, and obviously they turned around and started pointing their fingers at my sisters and I, and some very mean things were said. So we were the ones that were shunned and cut off, right? We were the bad guys. And then for my immediate family, like my parents and everyone, we were under the assumption, I mean, when we first told them, obviously my dad cried, my uncle cried, and my mom, like everybody was in tears, right? And in shock that it had happened to us. And then when it was brought to the accused family, there was supposed to be a sit down, like a panchat is what it's called in Punjabi. So where the elders gather, and then, they, I guess, confront him, and our story would be heard. But instead of that was never carried out. We were told it would happen. So that there was also pressure put on my dad to keep on attending family events in that family. So us sisters stood our ground. It's like, Dad, there's no way you're going. Mom, there's no way you're going. Right. So they held back. And then we were even more the bad people, right? Because we were now causing too much ruckus. So, and the blame came on Jeeti. I'm the doer in the family. And then obviously there's a lot of history with the accused, which I'm, when my book comes out, you guys can all read that. But then we were left with, holy, how the hell do we stop this guy? If our family's not going to stop him, his family's not going to stop him, what the hell do we do? So then what's the natural course of action? You go to the police. So that's what we did with that. But you know what? The minute you break your silence, there's nobody that's going to come up to you and say, oh, but daughter, this is such the best thing you've ever done. And no one from the other side, the accused side, is going to give you a gold medal. Their job is to keep you quiet and bury you in the ground. And I faced that, and I cried over that. Especially initially when I was hearing all these things. But guess what? Here we are now. None of that matters. And I am so fortunate that I opened my mouth and that my sisters supported me. And, fast forward, we did get a verdict in the court case. We do have a film made. You know, I am writing books, and here we are having these discussions, and families right now are having these discussions in their homes about abuse. There's one friend came up and said, I spilt the tea with my parents. And I actually thought she literally spilled some tea or something. And then she explained to me, no, I told my parents, right? So we get a lot of messages that these conversations are happening in our, you know, in our community, in homes. And whenever there's one person abused, guaranteed there's a shitload of others. It's never just you. I can tell you that. I was under that assumption that it's only me. No, I mean, there's no only one special one. There's a number of them. So we have in our community, in our homes, because we don't talk about this subject at all, we're silenced, we have more than one person that's being victimized.
Thank you so much for sharing. We do have some final comments from YouTube. They're from people that you might know. One is from producer Selwyn Jacob. He says,
"Hi, Selwyn."
He says, "Brilliant. So proud of all of you." And we have a message from Prabjot who says, "So grateful to you, wonderful and courageous women."
Oh, thank you. I just want to say one last thing. I know my sister Slakshana, if she was here, she would tell everybody, please, when you see me, please come and look at me in the eyes. So don't look at me with shame. Just look at me in my eyes. So I'm going to just close off with the last comment that is very quotable. And you can quote Slakshana Pooni on that.
I'm going to sign off by, saying thank you, like a heartfelt gratitude to my parents, to my family that participated in this film. It wasn't easy for my parents, but I know deep down inside, because they didn't do anything for decades about this abuse, this was their way of actually stepping up and doing something about it. And I also want to thank my sister Salakshana. We really wanted her to be here today, and I know she's going to feel that she's missing out and all that. But she is such a wonderful soul, an older sister that has been through a lot of stuff. And I'm so glad she built up the courage to make the film. She actually said that she didn't think anyone's going to even come see the film, maybe a few white people. She said she didn't even know what a documentary was, even though she was, participating in the filming. And she told, when Baljit first told her, well, yeah, okay, so we're starting to film the documentary. She's like, well, who are the actors? Baljit's telling her, like, well, you. So it's just, she's so gullible, and we miss her. And thank you, Baljit. And this project was only possible because Baljit had this ability to just, be there and not in our way or any way. Like Gita said, no agenda. And there was so much trust. And I really thank her for honoring that trust so that my sisters could participate and my parents could participate in the way that they have, so that this film can continue on and help thousands and thousands of people heal. And thank you, everyone who's writing in with all your questions. I will get back to all of you, and hopefully soon. But thank you. And thank you, Meera. Thank you, NFB. Thank you, Shirley and Selwyn and Terry and everyone else. Mwah.
Baljit, would you like to say something?
Yeah, now's the time. No, what can I say? It's been an incredible journey, more than I could ever have imagined. And I mean, I have the heartfelt gratitude to the Pooni family. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this journey. I mean, as a woman, as South Asian, as a filmmaker, as a friend, it's been there's just been so many gifts from it, and so many memorable conversations we've had, so much, in terms of even unpacking my own stuff and talking about things. And it's just been incredible. And, big love to the National Film Board for making this possible. And I think this type of film can only be produced by them. They're so respectful of the process, of you, of the subject, they don't want to, it's not like maybe another broadcaster would want more sensational, or, you know what I mean? They're really, it's the best place for this film. You know, the film is going out there in colleges and high schools with, you know, curriculum and conversation. You know, they're really about impact, and this film is that. So deep, yeah, so much gratitude to NFB, to Selwyn, to Shirley, Terry, everybody. There's so many people. And also I think it's really cool, the behind the scenes, there were so many women involved in this movie. I feel really amazing, like from composer, sound designer, editor, production manager. I mean, so many people. So it was really, I think it touched all of our hearts, and everybody did that much more for this film, you know, because we all have had some kind of experience, and we see the greater good that can come of it. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey, and I hope it keeps going, and we can keep using this film for a long, long time to help people. And keep this conversation going.
And we have a final comment from our YouTube audience, from Sunder. Thank you for sharing your story. It has impacted my life in ways that I can't explain. And so I'd like to finally thank, you know, Baljit for this wonderful film, for Jeeti and Kira and Selakshana for sharing their stories. Thank you so much. And also, I'd like to express some gratitude to the National Film Board. As you've mentioned, they provided this space to have these very difficult conversations, and hopefully this will lead to more discussion and more awareness. And I just wanted to remind everyone that they can watch the documentary Because We Are Girls for free on the NFB website, nfb.ca, and here on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.